It's the afternoon,
Yeah, it's nap time.
Yeah. There's 8. Hey, Charles.
How you doing, Marcia?
I am good.
Good.
Commissioner Nash, good to see you.
Hi, Commissioner Hughes. I'm sorry, I just got your message.
That's okay. I didn't need to talk to you very bad anyway. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Here comes Sandra. We're doing good. Who are we missing?
Just trying to think.
That's what I'm trying to think too.
Oh, yeah.
Who?
Skolnick.
Bob Skolnick.
Oh, Bob Skolnick. Okay.
No, I'm here.
No, he's on there.
I'm here.
I see him. He's right.
Yeah, I
okay.
see him.
Gotcha.
Am I invisible?
No, I got you now. Looked like you were sitting in a hole, but you're all right. It looks like we are ready to get started, and it is 3:30, and I would like to call the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners full board to order. Realistine, would you start us off with an invocation, please?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Let us pray. Dear God, we come to you today thanking you for our many victories that we have successfully completed. We're here today, dear Lord, once again asking you to intercede on our deliberations regarding our county and the citizens that we represent. We ask, dear Lord, that you make us instruments of your glory as we strive to serve this county. We know that only your spirit can transform lives. Help us to do our part as you produce the harvest. This we ask in your sake forever. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Commissioner Hovey-Wright, would you recite the Pledge of Allegiance for us? And that way we won't have to all do it together. And
Oh, sure.
appreciate
I pledge
that.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Vice Chair Foster,
Here.
Commissioner Hovey-Wright,
Here.
Chairman Hughes,
Here.
Commissioner Laring,
Here.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Here.
Commissioner Nash,
Here.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Here.
Commissioner Snyder,
Here.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Here,
9 present.
Thank you very much. And we do have a quorum. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
support,
Commissioner Hovey-Wright with the motion and Commissioner Gary Foster with the second. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call on the approval of the agenda, please?
Commissioner Hovey-Wright,
Yes.
Commissioner Laring,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins,
yes,
Vice Chair Foster,
Yes.
Chairman Hughes,
Yes.
9 yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Everyone is present. Next is approval of the regular and closed sessions minutes of August 11th, 2020, and I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
so moved.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Snyder, second by Commissioner Mahoney. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns on the regular or minutes or the boards or having received the closed session minutes? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Laring,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Yes,
Vice Chair Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey-Wright,
Yes.
Chairman Hughes,
Yes.
9 yes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and that motion carries. Next, we have a presentation by the Director of Public Health, Kathy Moore. Kathy, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. I have 6 quick slides, and I hope to spend 3 minutes or less with you guys. So first slide is an overall statistics of Muskegon County cases. The blue hill just shows the accumulation of cases altogether. I think what would be more effective is looking at that red chart that shows the number of active positive cases. We reached our peak of active cases in mid-May. There was a low around July 3rd, and then after the holiday, our active cases started growing again. Then towards the first week in August, they started to decline again. So to date, we have identified 1,237 positive cases or positive individuals in Muskegon County. We've recorded 992 as recovered to date. 66 have died, but 63 of those were COVID-related deaths. And we have on record 189 positive active cases. And then in addition, we are managing an additional 90 plus quarantine individuals who haven't tested positive, but they are a close contact of a positive case. That is still a very manageable number for our public health staff at this time. Next slide, please. Just brief demographics, gender-wise, 509 of the positive cases were male, or 41%, and 728 were female, 58.9%. The racial demographics, 684 or 55% white, 402 or 32% Black, 95, which is other because it's the ethnicity of Hispanic, 7.7%, and then 49 individuals we were not able to capture their race or ethnicity. Next slide, please. This is just a highlight of a heat map to show the confirmed cases. Blue or dark blue would be the most casual or lower numbers, and then it turns green, yellow, orange, and red as the number within that area increases. Below that heat map is the regional statistics that show our contiguous counties, Kent, Ottawa, Newaygo, and Oceana. And we tried to color code it. The green for Oceana and Newaygo mean a lower number of cases. Muskegon and Ottawa with the orange has a similar number of cases, even though Ottawa has surpassed us with 1,892 identified cases. Muskegon County, though, we have 63 deaths compared to their 58 deaths, and then Kent County is in its own league. Also to the right are the numbers based on local municipalities. And again, some of those numbers continue to grow in small increments, and some are maintaining very well. Next slide, please. This is just a breakdown of the deaths by age group. In the age 40 to 49, with most of the deaths occurring age 80 and over. And most of those were long-term care facilities or nursing homes. Next slide, please. These are statistics that's not part of Muskegon County profile. It's not included in our number or our regional status of medium high, but this has been on the news, and it does impact Muskegon County. These are the prison population cases. Mass testing was conducted a few weeks ago. The prisons continue to test as needed if they've linked a case to a probable or suspected case. The Brooks Correctional Facility, 1,176 inmates were tested 0 were positive, and they were all negative. Muskegon Correctional Facility, 1,296 were tested, 613 were positive, 683 negative, and we had 1 death that occurred over the weekend, and that individual was at Sparrow Hospital at the time. Below on the brown coded chart, these are the staff employees in the prison system. This would impact Muskegon County numbers if they are Muskegon County residents. 11 of the 15 Muskegon correctional staff are Muskegon County residents, and 3 of the Brooks Correctional are Muskegon County residents. Next slide, please. And then my final is just a notice that we will have drive-through walk-up testing this weekend. Michigan National Guard is returning to assist us with pre-COVID-19 testing. The first day is at Health West on Friday from 3 to 6 in coordination with their voter registration event. And then Saturday will be in our South Campus parking lot from 9 to 1. And no appointments is needed. Testing is free. We can test minors, but the parent guardian has to be on site and give consent. And we still need a few volunteers. And that concludes my report. Marshall, have you right? You're volunteering. Thank you, Commissioner. I will write that down.
Kathy, could you please send us a copy of your slides?
Yes, and I have sent them to Kathy Tharp and Kristen Barnhill. I'm hoping they can share that with you.
Kathy,
Yes.
when I put your press release on my Facebook page, I think it's important, but there was something that I think could be better on it. There's a link to do the consent for testing in advance.
Yes.
That link just gets you to your website, and
Oh.
it's very difficult. I mean, I found it, but only because I knew what I was doing. If you don't know, it'd be really hard to find it.
Yeah.
So it
should be a direct link.
It should be a direct link.
Yeah,
And-
very
and-
helpful. That's
and-
very helpful. We will correct that, and for future events, definitely do it right next time.
Okay.
Thank you
And
very
could
much,
we have,
Kathy.
voter registration at the health department too?
We don't have the capacity. We could check with facility. I mean, we could check with Health West to see if they could also assist with that. We do
Yeah.
have it available for our WIC program, so we could also check with our WIC staff to see if they can be on site to do that, and if it would be an eligible WIC expense. But we will definitely check into that, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else have any questions for Kathy? Thank you very much, Kathy. Appreciate the information. Now
Thank
we
you.
will move on to our Finance Director, Beth Dick, with the fiscal year 2021 budget presentation. Beth, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a moment while I get my presentation up on the screen for you. Okay. Not looking like it's doing it as a slideshow. Well, I guess I'll just have to click through the slides. It's showing as a slideshow on my screen, but it's not picking the right screen. So I'm not sure why that did that. Try one more thing. Okay, well, I hope it's big enough for everybody to see. I did it as a slideshow and it's not picking up the right screen that it's sharing from, so I'm not sure why that is. Let me try something here. I'm gonna stop sharing and try it again and see if it works better. There we go. Okay. Good afternoon, Beth Dick, Director of Finance, and I would like to present to you the fiscal 2021 proposed budget for Muskegon County. I'd like to start off by thanking several people through this whole budget process that we've gone through this year. First of all, I'd like to thank some of my staff who normally would be in an audience if we were doing this in person. I usually introduce them at that time, but I think they might be online. So I'd like to recognize them. Carson Lehigh, Angie Gaszewski, Patty Rader, and Karen Miller are all individuals within the accounting department that worked very hard on getting the budget pulled together. And I would like to thank them for all their efforts. It was a very unusual year. We got through this process with them working shorter work weeks during the summer, as well as a lot of other departments did. I would also like to thank all of the directors, court administrators, and the elected officials through this budget process. It was a different year for us because of COVID, obviously, and just going through a different process this year than we have in other years in terms of how we approach the budget. You all received your documents, and the first pages, pages T1 through T8, represent what's called the budget transmittal letter, which we discussed the impact of COVID-19 and the resilience of the county's staff in responding to the COVID crisis. It also discusses the approach that we took to the budget for fiscal 2021 and the results of that approach. I'd like to start off by just reviewing the financial structure of the county so that the remaining slides can make some more sense in terms of what's the general fund and what some of the other funds are within the county. The general fund is the primary county operating fund, and this slide shows underneath that column what all makes up the general fund. The board is part of the general fund. The courts are part of the general fund. The sheriff, jail, road patrol, courtroom, and building security are all under the general fund. Prosecutor, the county clerk, register of deeds, drain commissioner, administration, finance, human resources, equalization, and facilities management are all part of the general fund, those departments and those operations. Then we have what are called special revenue funds. Those are funds that receive, many of them receive grant dollars. And they also, many of them do receive general fund dollars. They receive an appropriation from the general fund for matching dollars for those grants in some cases. And under that group is Health West, Public Health, Family Court, the Child Care Fund, which includes the JTC, Parks Accommodations Tax, which is the CVB, Blight Elimination, which was a grant, Community Corrections, Marine Safety, Emergency Services, Township Patrols, the Senior Millage, Department of Veterans Affairs, and the Public Defender. So those all are under the what we call Special Revenue Fund group. Then we have debt and capital project funds. We have our jail JTC. The Hall of Justice was a bond issue several years ago, CMH building, the Public Improvement Fund. Those are underneath the capital projects and debt fund groups. Then we have internal service funds, which is our equipment revolving fund, which is like an internal financing fund for purchasing equipment and vehicles and whatnot. We have our information technology fund, office services, and the insurance fund. And then under the enterprise category, we have the airport, solid waste, regional water system, wastewater, land bank, transit, and the delinquent tax revolving funds. So that's just kind of a summary of the fund structure within the county as kind of a reminder of how everything is set up in terms of the budget.
Beth,
Beth,
I-
does Matt's would come under transit on the
Yes.
enterprise fund?
Correct.
All of Matt's funding?
Yeah, it's under that group, under that fund group, and they receive state and federal grant resources, as well as they have their fair revenues and whatnot. We have had general fund support to transit in the past, but there's nothing planned for fiscal 2021 to come from the general fund for transit.
That's why it's not in there. I looked and looked. Thank you.
Beth, I have a question too.
Yes.
Land bank is an authority. Does that still go under an enterprise fund?
You're correct. It is a standalone authority, but it is grouped in our financial statements in the enterprise group of funds. It is a separate fund.
Okay, but it's not a separate entity?
It is a separate authority, but it is part of the county's financial structure as far as including them within our list of budgets, as well as when we report our annual financial report, our audit, it is included as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now turning to the general fund specifically to start out. Property tax revenues are the largest revenue source for the general fund. And for fiscal 2020, we experienced a taxable value increase of 3.58%. The taxable value increase is determined based on two components. The consumer price index, or inflation, is one of the components, and the other component is growth. And the two combined together is what makes up that taxable value increase. The CPI that we're projecting for fiscal 2021 is 1.4%, and that's based on the trend of inflation from last September to this September and where it's going. Equalization keeps track of that every month, and they provide us with an update each month. So the latest projection is a 1.4% increase on the inflationary component. We are also projecting a continuation of new growth of an additional 1.6%, which would be from new housing, new business development, and business expansions. So the sum of the two components were including an estimated taxable value increase for 2021 of 3%. And as I mentioned, last year for 2020, or this year, I should say, is 3.58. So just a little bit less than last year. And just for a frame of reference, a 1% increase in taxable value is equal to about $250,000 in property tax revenue. This slide shows the trend of our property tax revenues going back to 2010. And a couple years are not on here. Was 2008 and 9 was kind of when the last recession was. We really started to see a drop in our property tax revenues back in 2009, and then it's started to come back in 2013. And then it dipped again and has come back up over the last few years. The cumulative loss from the starting point of the decline, which was really 2009, which is off this graph, but going from 2009 to 2017, we lost approximately $18 million in property tax revenues from during that point in time. And we're just now, I think last year was the first year we were back up to the level of property tax revenues we were before the last recession in 2008. Other revenues in the general fund, we have state revenue sharing, which the governor's original budget that she published back in February, pre-COVID, included about a 2.3% increase in our revenue sharing for fiscal 2021. However, this year, they have announced that they are going to withhold a payment from us for the current fiscal year. And that equates to about a 20% reduction this year. So we've assumed a 20% reduction from the governor's original budget proposal for fiscal 2021. So that they would, assuming they're going to repeat what they did this year and withhold some of our money to help balance the state's budget. We also have another large revenue is charges for services, which we are including an increase, and that's from fiscal 20 revised budget of about $813,000, bringing it up to 9.8 million, basically returning those revenues back to pre-COVID levels, and which we saw a decrease in fiscal 20 in our jail revenues and our court revenues. So we're anticipating both of those revenues going back to what they were in fiscal, basically pre-COVID at the beginning of 2020, what the original budget assumed. And then we also have a transfer from the DTRF, stands for Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund, a transfer of 1.45 million for fiscal 2021. And in previous years, we used to have transfers well over $2 million coming from the Delinquent Tax Fund into the general fund. But that number has gradually declined as when the economy got better, fewer people are paying their taxes delinquent. Therefore, the revenues that went into that fund for people paying interest and penalties on those delinquent taxes has decreased over the last few years when the economy was improving. This graph is a historical graph showing the revenue sharing changes over the last several years, the last 10, 12 years. You can see that, we had 3.3 million. It went up to as high as 4.1 million in 2011. And then it dipped back down, and we've been kind of staying at about the 3.3, 3.6, 3.7 million for a number of years. Then the 2021 is where I mentioned that the state has chosen to withhold our August payment of about close to $900,000. And then for 2021, we have assumed a 3.1 million. So the trend has declined. It's gone back up a little bit, kind of stabilized, and now we've seen a dip down for 2020 and then leaving it rather flat for 2021.
Beth, I had a question for you.
Yes.
On your previous slide there, with the COVID regulations on the jail population, wouldn't we see a significant reduction in those revenues?
In the jail?
Yeah.
We did see that in 2020, or we are seeing it in 2020. For now, the budgets that were submitted did not anticipate a lower level for 2021. We're assuming, for the year now, possibly we might start out the year lower, but we anticipate we'll be back up to pre-COVID levels for 2021 overall. That's what's included in the budget as of now.
Okay, so this is not a fiscal year. This is just a calendar year.
It's a fiscal year.
Okay. So this would mean from October on through, correct?
Correct.
So if we do have that reduction still continuing throughout the year, then it probably would be a reduction in that revenue.
It would have to be revised. Yes.
Yeah.
And there's many uncertainties at this point. I mean, revenue sharing is an assumption. We have not gotten definitive numbers from the government, from the state, as far as what those numbers look like for next year. We've only been told what they look like for this year. So it's too early at this point to know what the state's going to do on the revenue sharing, and obviously the impact of COVID going into early next year is still unknown at this point as well.
Right.
So moving on to expenditures within the general fund, salaries and fringe benefits. We are a service organization, and the majority of our expenses are related to employees and wages and fringes. They comprise nearly 50% of the general fund expenditures. For medical insurance, our insurance broker has told us we can expect about 11% increase in our insurance costs starting January 1, which is when our new rates go into effect, which is about a $603,000 increase over 2020. Our retirement costs are decreasing about $116,000. And we have been able to see a decrease in those costs over the last couple of years, primarily due to the issuance of the pension bonds and some of the other changes that employees took, reductions in benefits, and we did a lump sum contribution from wastewater a couple of years ago, or back in 2019. So all of those changes that we've done have improved our retirement cost expense. We've decreased our OPEB, and I'm sorry, I used an acronym here. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employee Benefits or Post-Employment Benefits, which is basically our retiree insurances. As of our last actuarial evaluation, which was done last fall, we have been notified or through that valuation that we are 103.3% funded. So we're over 100% funded in our OPEB. And therefore we have reduced the amount of charges to departments because of that overfunding, which is saving us $416,000 compared to the 2020 budget. And this is again, just within the general fund. So we've seen a significant improvement there. And that again is due to a lot of the changes that have been made related to those plans and those benefits. The board approved to change a provider of the Medicare Advantage program a year ago. It was a year, maybe close to 2 years ago. And that was a significant savings to the county of costs, as well as changing for new retirees, we've changed the insurance plan that they can participate in. So those things have significantly improved our funding of those benefits to our retirees. And then we are continuing to use a workers' comp reserve that had built up over a number of years. So we are not, this will be the 4th year that we are not charging departments a workers' comp expense in their budgets. This slide shows the appropriations to other funds. So this is where I mentioned in the beginning where the general fund has all of those various activities under it, but it also does provide financial support to other funds that are not the operations that are not directly under the general fund. And that is done through an appropriation to those other funds. And these are some of the primary ones I've listed down below here: the Child Care Fund, Family Court, Public Health. In the past, we've had Airport, the Debt Service Fund for the Jail JTC project, Health West. In the past, Brookhaven, Transit in the past, Indigent Defense Fund, and then just kind of there's some other smaller funds, but the bigger ones I've listed here. So this shows the amount of general fund dollars that end up going to other funds outside of the general fund. And then this lists the dollar amount of those appropriations in the 2021 budget, the Child Care Fund being the largest, which is 4.2 million. And under the Child Care Fund is the JTC is included in there. We also have foster care, in-home intensive treatment, residential placements. Those are all part of the Child Care Fund. The jail JTC debt service fund at 2.6 million, public health at just under 1.8, friend of the court at 1.5 million, the indigent defense fund of $1.1 million, Health West at 700,000, and then for fiscal 21, we do not show any appropriations to airport or MATS. And that is primarily because,
That one question. In
Okay.
2020, did we show any funds going to MATS or the airport?
not for MATS, the airport, I believe we still had an appropriation in there, and I don't remember the exact dollar amount,
Okay,
to cover some of the local match on capital.
okay,
But they both received CARES Act funding that can be
Okay.
used for operations and capital. So it's possible that airport, even for this fiscal year, would not need that appropriation, but I would have to double check that.
well, and we don't have anything in there anyway, so we hope they don't.
I was speaking for 2020, but for
Okay.
2021, yes, we did not include anything for 2021.
Thank you.
So looking at the total revenues for the general fund for fiscal 2021, we have $49,446,671. And this graph shows a historical trend of how those revenues have performed, including the fiscal 20 and amended budget and or projected budget, and then the recommended budget for this year. For comparison purposes, I did exclude in fiscal 19 and 20, there were bond issues that occurred, and I've removed those bond issue proceeds from this for comparison purposes. Those were years that we had bond issues that were unusual, so they needed to be removed for comparison purposes. This graph, and you can, in your budget document, pages S6 through S14 is where it really goes through all the different revenues within the general fund. So those pages S6 through S14 describes how the revenues look by category. And again, as I mentioned, that property taxes are the largest revenue within the general fund, but included in this tax slice here is not just property tax revenue, it also includes liquor tax, payment in lieu of tax or PILT, and delinquent personal property tax. So that's also included in this tax slice here. The next largest group is charges for services, the orange group, or the orange slice, which includes district court costs, circuit court costs, revenue that the Register of Deeds office brings in, revenue from equalization. Those are all included in charges for services. The third largest group is intergovernmental, the yellow slice, which is where our revenue sharing shows up. We also have what's called a state court distribution revenue from the state, and the personal property tax reimbursement revenue are all part of intergovernmental. And then the black slice is transfers, and that's transfers coming from the delinquent tax fund. The green slice here is contributions from private sources, and I didn't remember to relabel that, but that is the DTE Test and Tune program revenue, and that's all that represents. So then looking at the dollars associated with all those revenue categories, I'm breaking it down here in millions. Property tax revenues are at 26.28 million for the current property tax. And then we do have delinquent property tax revenues of 0.96 million. The personal property tax reimbursement comes from the state. That's reimbursing us for the revenues that the personal property that became exempt back in 2015, I think was the first year. We get a reimbursement from the state for our losses on those exemptions, plus some additional proceeds that they've built up. So we budgeted $1.49. Our liquor tax revenues are 850,000 or 0.85. State revenue sharing is 3.09 million. The transfer from the delinquent tax revolving fund is $1,450,000. And then here's some smaller ones: industrial facilities tax, only 100,000, special assessments, about 80,000. We do not have a transfer from what's called the tax forfeiture fund budgeted this year due to the state Supreme Court ruling recently that is no longer allowed for us to do that. No transfer from the public improvement fund either. The state court equity fund is again coming from the state at 980,000. The DTE program income, $1,870,000. Administrative cost reimbursement is the revenue that the general fund receives for charging other departments for the cost of central services within, mainly within the general fund, which are administration, accounting, HR, the treasurer's office. Those are the primary ones. They perform services for other departments, and grants will cover those costs, those administrative costs. So that revenue is budgeted at 2.5 million. Small amount of federal grants of 50,000, state grants of 200,000, small amount of investment income of only about 70,000. Charges for services of 7.21 million, and you can find a detailed listing of those services on pages S8 through 11 in your budget document. There's a wide variety of them. I tried to pull out some of the big ones already, but there's a lot of other ones. Fines and forfeitures of 590,000. We get a judicial salary reimbursement from the state of 660,000. Some rental income, excuse me, and then other. I got this down to under $1 million, so it's 910,000. I tried to pull out as many of the big ones as I could to get that other down as low as I could, but the total, bringing the total to 49.5 million. Now moving on to expenditures, we're at 51,252,041. And this is a graph showing the history of the general fund expenditures, excluding for fiscals 20 or 19 and 20. Again, I excluded the bond proceed distributions to make it more comparative, but you can see the trend of expenses going up over the last several years. Excuse me. And then looking at expenditures by function, again, pages S15 through 19 in your budget book will give you the information of where this was pulled from. So the legislative piece, which is basically the Board of Commissioners budget, is 0.79%. The largest slice is by not much, but 29.64 is the general government, which includes the clerk, register of deeds, the treasurer's office, equalization, administration, accounting, and HR. Excuse me. Public safety is the next largest, which is the jail and the road patrol, the sheriff courtroom security, building security, all of that is under your public safety group. And then the next largest is this blue shaded slice at 26.53, which is the appropriations to other funds that I went through, which is your child's care fund, public health, family court, Health West, the jail JTC debt, and the indigent defense fund, which is some of the larger ones make up that. So you can see the expenses from a function standpoint. That's how they are allocated. And then dollar wise, showing you how those same functions are allocated by dollars. So the legislative component is only 0.40 or 400,000. Judicial is 6.66. General government is 15 million. The public safety is 14.88 million. Recreation and health is very small at only 90,000, and debt service of 0.43, 430,000, and then the appropriations again and transfers is 13.6 million. So the total of 51.25 from a functional standpoint. Then looking at it from a category standpoint and showing how the breakdown of the expenses are by category are, as I mentioned before, salaries and fringes make up almost 50% of general fund expenditures at 24.95 million. Supplies are 960,000. Travel at 270,000. Utilities 690. Contractual services of 4.14. Rent and the IT chargeback is 2.19 million. The DTE program costs of 1.65 million. Insurance, and this is general liability, property, and auto insurance, is a little over $1 million. The drain assessment expense is 300,000. Debt service of 430,000. Building and equipment maintenance at 450,000. Software maintenance at 240,000. Just a small amount of other, and then the appropriations and transfers of 13.89. So a total of 51.25 million in expenses by category. And then a further breakdown of just the salaries and fringes, since it is such a large number. The salaries and wages are 15.7 million. There's about $500,000 in overtime. Social Security is 1.2 million. Medical at almost 5 million. Benefit option, which is people that take, rather than it's in lieu of taking the medical insurance, about 260,000. Dental at 170,000. Retirement is a little over 2 million. Retirees benefits is about 190,000. There is no workers' comp, and then there's a small amount of other benefits of about 340,000 to get to the 24.95 million in wages, salaries, and fringes. So getting to the end here, we do have total revenues budgeted at 49.45 million, expenditures of 51.25 million, which results in a deficit of $1.8 million. We have more expenditures than revenues. And part of what was included when the board approved doing the work share program for 2020 was that those departments that participated in that program, the savings that was generated by participating would be allowed to be basically carried over and utilize fund balance in 2021. Those the savings that's been generated so far is about $600,000. And so we would be saying that basically 600,000 would come out of unassigned fund balance, and that would leave about $1.2 million left to balance. These are the options that were included in the document of how to potentially balance the budget. We could continue the furloughs for departments through December 2021, which there are many departments that have already offered to do that and are currently still furloughing. Employee layoffs. We could resurrect the tax allocation board, which was established back in 1974 when our county operating millage was first established. That by doing that, we could adjust our millage rate back up to its full authorized amount of 6.2 mils, which we're currently at, rolled back due to Headley at 5.6978 mils. So there's a little over $0.5 mil difference between what our authorized millage is and what we're currently able to levy. would generate about $2 million of additional revenue if we were able to get back to our full millage. And the other option would be just to take it all out of fund balance and utilize fund balance reserves. So that's the end of the general fund presentation. I do have more presentation that goes over some of the other funds. I don't know if you'd like to stop and ask any questions there. I'm going to take a quick drink of water.
Marcia, did you have a question?
Yes, on page S25, there's a dramatic decrease in expenditures for health. And that seemed a little unusual given the COVID issues we're dealing with. And this would be for the recommended budget. 161,592 down to 85 and 57.
You look at that real quick and see what area that's happening in. Let me just quickly look up that. Oh, that is due to Brookhaven. We were including even though we closed Brookhaven back in 2018, we continued to have the building. And so the costs associated with maintaining the building, we continue to include in our budget. And since we've now sold the building, those costs have drastically decreased in that health group. So that's why the decrease.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Beth before we move on? All righty.
Okay.
Oh, Marcia, you got another one?
Oh.
And I'm up here. Okay, the page right before him, S24.
Yes.
The public safety. Now this starts October 1st, and my guess is we'll still be dealing with COVID till the end of the year, and yet the with reduced jail what's the word, number of people in jail, and yet the budget went up about 500,000.
Let me look at that real quick.
So yeah.
And I'm looking this up by flipping to the pages just prior to that lists all the different things that make up public safety. So
The jail and the sheriff.
Yep.
And marine
so
safety.
we've got, marine safety is a fund outside the general fund. So it appears that the primary area of the increase is in the jail. Because again, when budgets were worked on and submitted, we did both on the revenue side as well as the expenditure side, we're assuming things would go back to pre-COVID levels. So we've reduced for fiscal 20 both revenues and expenses in the jail because of the lower inmate population. But when we moved into 2021, the budget that was submitted assumed we were going to be back to normal levels, if you will. So both on the revenue side and on the expense side, so that there's a potential that we could, assuming, like you said, that things continue into the earlier months of the year, we may have some expenses that we can reduce, such as like the medical costs. And I did confirm we did lower the meal cost for this year in the jail because of the lower population, but we did also lower revenues. So potentially we could look at some adjustments early into the year on both the revenue and the expenditure side in the jail, if things continue.
Thank you, Beth. I think you can move on.
Okay, sounds good. Now looking at the countywide budget, all funds revenues for fiscal 2021. Revenues are showing at a total of 233,842,544, and this total does include the general fund at 49.5 million. When you look at things from an all funds standpoint, and as I mentioned, the general fund, the largest revenues is the property taxes or the tax category. But when you look at it from an all funds perspective, it's charges for services. It's this yellow slice here. And that is because on an all funds basis, what's included in this is all of the services or a large portion of the revenues within wastewater, solid waste, Health West. Their revenues are classified as charges for services, regional water, IT, as well as the general fund does have charges for services revenue. And this information can be located in your document on pages S33 through S34. Then looking at all funds expenditures, we're showing 236,130,064. And looking at those expenses by function, you can see that the largest component for all funds is 47% is health. And that's where the expenses related to public health, Health West, solid waste and wastewater, their expenditures fall into that category. The next group, next largest is general government, which is where you have your airport, transit or MATs, the general fund, as well as our insurance fund, all fall into that category. Now looking at some of the individual funds.
Beth, if I may, John Snyder,
Yes,
you show a historical general fund expenditure, transfer of judgment bond proceeds, $5 million.
yes.
Is that a current fund balance?
No, those were bonds that were issued back in June of this year. So the money came in and the money was transferred out. So that was just within this year.
That's what I thought. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Beth, can I ask one question, just going back to the jail, please?
Yes.
The medical expenses in the jail went way up too. Was that part of that $500,000, do you think? The increase in the jail cost?
Yes, it relates. So for 2021,
Yes.
is that what you're talking about? Yes. So for 2020, we reduced the budget for in the area of medical because of the lower population since COVID, as well as we reduced some other costs within the jail for like some of the meals and whatnot. And for fiscal 2021, we've basically, the budget that was submitted assumed it was going back to pre-COVID levels. So it's, if you compared it back to the original budget for 2020, it's probably right in line. I didn't go back and look at that comparison, but we did reduce it for 2020 revised budget because of the lower population. And then it was assumed that, you know, starting the new fiscal year, things would go back to where the way they were.
Right, but the reason I'm bringing that up was because we had a couple of adjustments because of the costs of medical care for the residents of the jail.
Last year, you mean
Yeah.
like fiscal 19?
Right, I'm just wondering, because there's no cap on that.
There's I think it's the pharmacy.
The pharmacy costs.
Are the things that we were coming back and the board was approving increases for. This year, we haven't had that issue mainly because of COVID.
Okay, anyway, because Marcia asked, why that expense went up for the upcoming year. And I was
Right.
wondering if much of it was pharmacy costs. It could be part of it.
It's basically just moving things back to the way they had been originally before COVID.
Okay.
So now I just have a few slides that go through some of the larger funds outside the general fund and showing their historical trends. So this is the Family Court Fund, which has a significant amount of grants that fund the operations. However, this yellow line does show the general fund appropriation, the general fund support that it does receive. So you can see the red is the trend of it, the expenditures in this fund, and the line, the yellow line is the general fund support. Public health, same thing. You see the expenditure trend here, and then the general fund support for their operations over the last several years. Health West, revenue, or excuse me, expenditure trend. They had a large increase in fiscal 20, and that is they've received a rate adjustment as well as a higher allocation for fiscal 20. So that's part of the reason why that has gone up. And then the general fund support has is about 700,000. We did have 1 year where there was an additional appropriation of about 300,000 that was approved. Marcia, you have a question?
Beth, yeah, how is it determined that, for example, the MAT system is not a fund that gets general fund support?
So
Even
the
though
MAT,
I know we have the last couple of years, but
right. So MATS is an enterprise fund. It up until I think 2 or 3 years ago operated without needing general fund support. It had sufficient state and federal resources to operate, and as well as their own revenues, like private fund, fair revenues, as well as they get some advertising revenues and those kinds of things. So in order to operate, it strictly was able to operate without any general fund support up until a couple of years ago.
well, I know that, but who decided? Is it decided locally or at the state level that they're an enterprise fund and not a fund that is eligible for a general fund support?
Well, it doesn't really matter that it's an enterprise fund, that it couldn't still get general fund support. The airport, for example, is an enterprise
Right.
fund, and it does get general fund support.
Right.
The enterprise funds typically are supposed to operate like a business, so they hopefully wouldn't need to have any type of general fund support. They should be able to operate on their own without that, but there are some instances where the general fund support is needed. So it's all in the determination of what type of operation it is versus, I mean, obviously MATS does get grant money, but it's the type of service it provides.
Beth, I have a question on that. As far as an enterprise fund, are those usually funds that are provide non-mandatory services? Because I was trying to think, our wastewater is not mandatory, and neither is
Right.
MATS, or neither is an airport. I wondered if that was part of the
That's
determination.
probably, I'm trying to think of an example that wouldn't be.
I couldn't think of
that-
anything either. That's why I wondered
'cause
if that was,
Even Brookhaven was an enterprise fund, and that
Right.
wasn't mandated.
because it's not
So,
mandated.
right.
I was thinking that that was one reason they were enterprise funds, was because they weren't mandated. They're supposed to support themselves.
Yeah, I can't think of an example of an enterprise fund that is mandated off the top of my head. So that would probably be a good way to describe it.
That was how it was described to me in the first place.
Mhm. I agree. Beth, I just want to call attention to the Health West revenue, the budget.
Mhm.
That represents about 32% of our entire budget. I didn't, now that I'm seeing this, I guess I wasn't paying attention. I didn't realize that thing had gotten that big. That's a big budget.
No
Yes.
general fund.
700,000.
Oh. Look, the yellow line looks like it's at the bottom.
Well, it is because of the scale.
Oh,
But I mean, yes, it is a larger fund in terms of dollars than even the general fund at 70, anywhere between 60 and 70 million. It's more dollars than the general fund.
Wow.
Look at public safety by comparison. It's even huger.
Public safety was only $14 million. Or 14.8, wasn't it, Beth? Something like that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, 14.8. Yep.
This is 76.6 in 2020.
I guess I was looking at the general fund portion of it. I'm sorry.
So the child care fund, this is a graph showing the history of that. And again, that's includes the JTC. It does receive a significant general fund appropriation. It's around 40% of the costs incurred within the child care fund. It's a match requirement for the grant. So it's a significant amount. It receives the largest general fund appropriation than any other fund that receives general fund appropriations outside the general fund itself.
Beth, can you tell me why that went down? Why it seems to be going down?
From fiscal 18 to 19 here. I believe that was due to, I have to go back and double check that. I'm not sure off the top of my
Closing
head.
of Child Haven?
I don't know.
Child Haven was not a very significant expense, but let me go back and look at that.
That's okay. You can let me know later, but I'm
Okay.
just hoping that's good news.
It is good news. This is Sandra Vanderheide, the Circuit
Hi,
Family
Sandra.
Court Administrator. No problem. We have been able to send more and more youth out of county for residential placements. Therefore, that's where that cost savings has came in. We've been able
Okay.
to keep them in our community.
Great, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
does this
Thank you.
represent the kids that are in foster care that used to be at Child Haven?
Foster care is included in the child care fund.
Yes, that's what okay.
Thank you, Sandra.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll move on to the Indigent Defense Fund, also previously known as the Public Defender Office. We don't have years back here because they were part of the general fund up until 2019 when we separated them out because that's when the grant money started to come in. So this shows the expenses in the Indigent Defense Fund and the amount of general fund support. And for fiscal 2021, the grant amount that we're assuming is 1.6 million from the state to run that. Now looking at the airport, this shows the revenues and expenditures for a number of years. The year that looks kind of an outlier here at 6.1 million, that's because that amount includes 4.4 million in revenue in federal and state grant reimbursements for capital projects. Those dollars come in certain years when projects are completed. So that kind of is an outlier in that year. The projects would have been completed in earlier years and we get reimbursed in later years. And the expense side of that, you don't really see because it's based on depreciation. So depreciation is more evenly spread versus how the revenue comes in. And then the bottom line shows the general fund support over the last few years. So we have had $500,000 down to 100,000, 300,000. Oh, it looks like we have about 200,000 budgeted for fiscal 2020 and then zero for next year. Transit or MATS, this shows the history of that. And again, some outlier years where we have some high revenues. And again, that's same as airport where they receive revenues from federal and state grant dollars for capital projects. It was 2.6 million and 3.3 million in fiscal 20 and 21 respectively. And then the general fund support, we've only did an appropriation twice, once in 2018 for about 200,000 and once in 2019 for 400,000.
So I have a question. The last 2 years, 20 and 21, it shows revenues greater than expenses, and yet we are told that that it's in the hole. So this doesn't match with.
Yeah, so that's where the revenues, as I've got the footnote down here, those are revenues for from federal and state grant dollars for capital. So the capital expense doesn't show up as the dollar amount of the full amount because it's based on depreciation spread over a number of years, but the revenue comes in all as the total amount. So that's why it looks.
Yep, I get it.
That way. And I've got some slides on some of the public works departments, which were actually presented to the Public Works Board earlier this month, I think it was, or maybe it was last month, on their budget. So solid waste, you can see the trend of their revenues and expenditures. And I've got a few footnotes here for some odd years. 2015 expenses were higher than normal due to a 3.1 million increase in the post-closure reserve. And then 2016 was lower. Expenses were lower due to a reduction in the post-closure reserve, which is an adjustment that's made once a year at the end of the year when we're preparing the audited financial statements. Wastewater revenues and expenses, and you can, again, was presented to the Public Works Board earlier. You can see the trend of revenues exceeding expenditures. The equipment revolving and IT fund, we combine those two funds for financial statement purposes. The IT function was included in the general fund up until 2014. So that's why they're not in, that's why this year looks lower, but you can see that the expenses have grown there. We've invested a lot of money in IT over the last several years. And then the insurance fund, which is where we have all of our medical, general liability, property, auto, all of those, workers' comp, unemployment insurance is all within the insurance fund, has a large expense and revenue of over 20 million. And we do have reserves in this fund as well to cover shortfalls. As I mentioned earlier, the workers' comp has built up a reserve over a number of years. So that covers the funds, the other funds outside the general fund. And then I was going to discuss some positions and capital next. The position eliminations that we've included in the fiscal 2021 budget, there's a total of 6 positions that we're recommending for elimination, and that's across the county. There are 3 grant funded positions due to the elimination of I think it's 1 or 2 grants, and those incumbents in those positions will be moving to other vacant positions within the county. There's 1 position that will we're recommending for elimination that will result in a retirement, and then there are 2 other positions that are resulting in layoffs.
Where are those? Well, you probably can't say where those are, huh? What department?
If you refer to in your book, they're on page S49.
Beth, I have a question on the grant funded positions that are due to elimination of grants. Are they moving into other grant funded positions, or are those going to be additionally funded?
There are other vacant positions. I don't know specifically if they're positions that are part of another grant, but they're budgeted vacant positions.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now moving into capital improvements. We do have some capital included for the airport, a terminal roof replacement, terminal heating system upgrade, 2 field tractors, a sweeper and generator, and the county cost is only a little over 13,000. There's grants that cover the majority of those costs, including the CARES Act money that the airport received this year. The parks include some picnic tables, a new garage at Patterson Park, and a maintenance building at Pioneer. Total of 230,000, of which 48,975 will come from previous bonds that were issued, some proceeds that were left from that were specifically designated for the parks.
Are
And
these
they
things
do-
that will have to be approved by the county board before they're done? Are they just an estimated capital improvement?
They're estimated based on costs that the department submitted, and
Okay.
they would, yes, have to receive board approval to go out for bid.
Thank you.
The regional
So
water.
I just have a sort of funny aside, but I know it's a lot of, I don't know how many picnic tables that involves, but restaurants all over town are using picnic tables outside for outdoor seating. And I don't know if that's going to continue post-COVID, but there'll probably be a lot of picnic tables available.
We'll make a note of that. If Bob's listening, he will make a note of that.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, some of those picnic tables that are out in the community, in the downtown area, are parks and heritage, not necessarily parks, but heritage landing tables.
Oh, I see. Okay. So they were very clever. Okay.
Yep.
What's the
What's the rent? Oh, we give them every break we can.
Okay, the regional water system has a number of projects going on there. The Channel Crossing project, which is currently in progress, Memorial Drive project. They have a truck that they're requesting, some hydrant painting, the quarter line tank drain, inspect and wash that tank, and a variable frequency drive changeouts, which I
What's
couldn't
that?
tell you exactly what that is, but Matt might be able to if he's listening. The total of all of those are about 8.4 million. And there is some reserves from a prior year bond issue that can be used towards that, as well as they will be coming to the board for approval to do another bond issue for the remainder of the project.
Beth, how is the Channel Crossing project? I know that's the biggest chunk of that. How is that getting paid for?
So
Did we
there
get
is-
grants for that?
I don't believe there's any grants. There's some bond proceeds left from a previous bond issue that's covering a portion of that. And then they will be, through the Public Works Board, be coming to the board for approval for an additional bond issue for the rest of it. And I don't have the specific breakdown of how much that additional might be for. Matt, if you're listening, you might be able to add to that.
Well, we'll start the process here shortly. Once bids are in hand, we'll set the par amount and request the Board of Public Works bond that portion, as Beth said. The Board of Public Works earmarked previous bond proceeds about $2.4 million for this project. So we have that we're using now for the first phase. And once we get the bids for the second phase.
Fresh tomatoes, and it is super tasty.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I forgot to mention that all of the recommended capital improvements you can find in your document on pages S59 through 61. Moving on to solid waste, and they've got a lot of things going on out there too. Cap cell 2 and 3, construct a gap cell, purchasing land, replace a flare, engineering on the cap and gap cell and expansion, alternate daily cover and cleaning an interceptor ditch, all about $10 million. And that I believe is all through existing resources that they already have.
Most of
Transit,
that,
sorry?
I was just gonna point out, most of the money for that is set aside as we go. We have to set aside money for capping and things like that, in a perpetual care fund. So we do have that money set aside.
Thank you. Transit includes a request for 4 heavy-duty buses, technology equipment, and support vehicles. It's about 2.9 million, and it's primarily grant funded. So that's also included in the recommended budget.
Beth, those aren't going to be big buses, are they? They're going to be small buses?
They're referred to as heavy-duty buses. I would have to, Bob, do you happen to know?
Yes, those are full-size buses. Some of our buses are coming to the end of their useful life. So we have a replacement program, and those are part of the replacement program.
I understand that, but do we really need big buses? Can't little, I mean, you never see a full one. That's one
Well,
of the
with the-
biggest gripes we get from the residents
Oh,
is
yeah.
that the buses aren't full.
Great.
And you
Right,
keep buying big ones. Won't we buy 4 little ones instead of 2 big ones?
Well, we have a number of smaller buses that are in use and can be used. But the larger buses are, they provide more space for riders, and also it costs virtually the same to run a big bus, a larger bus compared to one of the half-size buses. I understand your concern though, Commissioner.
I have a question too. What is the IT or the technical?
That would be passenger counters and other
Okay.
technology type information that would assist passengers and assist MATS management in counting passengers, that sort of thing.
Right. The
And
concern
our
we
resident,
expressed. Yeah.
our municipalities have asked for that information so that they can see, what it is they're actually paying for in their municipality.
Okay. We're getting to the end here. Wastewater also has a lot of projects going on. For next year, the South Irrigation Pump Station improvements, SCADA system improvements, C-Station Biodome irrigation rig replacements, pump stations J and W improvements, interceptor ditch cleaning, vehicle replacements, and lab equipment, all at a total of 14.7 million. And they also have funding for that set aside.
And that is also an enterprise fund, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So getting to the total, as I previously on previous slides, we have revenues of 233.8 million, expenditures of 236.313 million. This also shows a deficit of about 2.29 million, but there are sufficient fund balances or retained earnings to absorb those deficits, or their current assets exceed their current liabilities. So that also is the other criteria, not to have to file a deficit elimination plan. And then the budget, upcoming budget schedule, assuming the board approves today, the public hearing for the budget will be September 8th. And then on September 15th, Ways and Means will be bringing final budget amendments for the 2021 budget to the Ways and Means Committee for consideration, which would then move on to the full board on the 22nd for adoption of the 2021 budget. That will be the last meeting scheduled for the end of before the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you very much, Beth. That was a good presentation. Does anybody have any additional questions for Beth?
Susie, I'd like to just make a comment. I know there are people, there's 71 people on the call. The expenses for the public works look like they're really, it looks like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But many of those projects have been in the works for years. That that kind of maintenance and upgrading has to be planned for a long time in advance. The money is, basically put aside to complete the work. And lest any flags are going up because of the size of the projects.
You're right, Bob. That money's been sitting there for a lot of years waiting to get enough money to start the project. So thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Beth. Appreciate that.
Welcome.
And we will move on. Would you please put the agenda back up so we can take a look at that? Perfect. And now we will move on to public comment on an agenda item. Do we have anyone in the public that would like to comment?
Madam Chair, I'm not seeing anybody.
I am not either. All right, we will move on. We will move on to our committee and board reports. Transportation Committee, Commissioner Reelstein. You need to unmute yourself.
Janet, hey, can I call you back? I'm on a Zoom call. I'll call you back in a little bit. Okay.
Kristen, would you please
Commissioner
unmute
Wilkins,
Reelstein?
you're on mute.
Reelstein, you need to press your mute button to unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, can you hear?
We
Yes.
can.
Okay. The Transportation Committee met on August 13, 2020. It was recommended and I move TR 200826 through TR 200830.
Second.
Just a note on that, it will be 26, 27, 29, and 30 as motion 28 was tabled.
Was tabled. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I second that,
Thank
Marcia.
you. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
Are there any comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright,
Yes.
Commissioner Laring,
No on 26 and 27. Yes on 29 and 30.
and Chairman Hughes.
Yes.
That's 8 yes on 26 and 27 and 8 yes, 1 no on 26, 8 yes, 1 no on 27, and 9 yes on 29 and 9 yes on 30.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and those motions carry.
And that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
No, we have a
Reelstein,
tabled motion.
We do have a tabled motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's,
That will be under my report.
That's going to be under your report? Okay.
Yes, both of these that are tabled on the other
All
one as
right,
well.
we will move on then to the Ways and Means Committee. Commissioner Skolnick.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. The Ways and Means Committee met on August 20th. I'd like to bring the following items for consideration. WM 20/08-64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, and 71.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns on the Ways and Means agenda? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright,
Yes.
Commissioner Laring,
No on 64 and no on 68, yes on the rest.
and Chairman Hughes.
Yes.
That's 8 yes, 1 no on 64, 9 yes on 65, 9 yes on 66, 9 yes on 67, 8 yes, 1 no on 68, and 9 yes on 69, and 9 yes on 70, and 9 yes on 71.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, and that motion carries too. Anything else under your report, Mr. Skolnick?
Oh, no, Madam Chair, that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we will move on to the chairman's report. Do we have any committee liaisons that would like to make a report? I know there have not been a lot of in-person meetings going on, but all right, we will move on. I would like to tell you that the Veterans Affairs, you'll remember we had a van donated to us by My Subaru, and that's being used 5 days a week by volunteer drivers who are transporting the veterans to medical appointments, housebound veterans to the store, and there are presently 3 outside organizations that are conducting unsolicited veteran food bank fundraisers. This is a wonderful example of how our community is extremely supportive of our veterans and our families. And I'd like to thank Mike Bow and his staff over there at the Veterans Administration. They do a great job for our vets, and I really appreciate it. I also like to tell you, you might as well get your bikes out. You can maintain social distancing really well, and you can take your bike or take a trail run or walk up Mosquito Creek. And it's not just because there's mosquitoes there. And the Hart Montague Trail is beautiful. And the Muskegon Trail runs from Muskegon all the way to Marne. Actually, it runs from up by Whitehall, I believe, all the way to Marne.
Right.
Go ahead, Ken. You're
It's
gonna tell
just
me where it starts?
the Meyer Berry Junction Trail starts in Whitehall and heads down toward
Yep.
the
Okay.
Muskegon.
Oh, that's right. And that's the one that joins the Muskegon Trail. Okay,
Right.
perfect. Perfect. Also, you can enjoy the outdoors and visit one of Muskegon County's 6 parks. And just so you know them all, Blue Lake, Pioneer, Minot, Twin Lake, Moore, and Patterson Park. They're open from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. And if you want to look at any of those, they are on our fabulous website under muskegoncountyparks.org. In 2019, the city of Norton Shores opened its fully accessible kayak launch on the south coast of the Black Lake on Wilson Road. So you can take your kayak down there and take a walk on the nature trails, on the boardwalk of Little Black Lake, and really enjoy that area. I remember, Mark, when we went down there to open that launch, it was so rainy and so muddy, you could hardly get down that road. So I'm hoping it's dried out now and ready to go. I know a lot of people that are enjoying that. And that does complete my report, and I will turn it over to our administrator for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's 2 items here that I want to talk a little bit about because we tabled them. The first one was on August 13, 2020, the Transportation Committee approved the motion to bring the tabled transportation motion TR 20/08-28 to the full board on August 25th. So the question was the cleaning at the mats, and the initial request is to re-solicit new custodial service. To do that, we'd have to terminate the convenience of the custodial service contract with Professional Building Services. So the couple of questions that were asked was, one, would the next low bid be willing to pick up the service? And so Director Farah called DM Burr Facility Management, which was the second low. And they said, no, we can never meet those prices now. Cleaning conditions are more restrictive now due to COVID. They would have to rebid it and provide a new number. And they said they'd be willing to do that, but it will not be the same rate that they offered then. Also, Jim Coons, Matt's manager, spoke to FTA, and they told them that for them to go back and use the old rate, they would not get funds from them to support it. So In other words, they're telling you can't use it if you want FTA funding. So with that, I would recommend going back to the original motion as it read, to authorize MATS to begin the process determining the convenience its custodial service contract with Professional Building Services, LLC, and to re-solicit for new custodial services for MATS facility.
So move.
We have a
Support.
motion- a motion by Commissioner Nash, second by Commissioner Mahoney. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright,
Yes.
Commissioner Laring,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Chairman Hughes,
Yes,
9 yes.
thank you, and that motion carries. Mr.
Thank you.
Administrator?
The next one, it goes back to the last Public Works Board meeting about the recycling event for this year, the one in October. Again, Director Fair went and talked to Eagle about the concern of holding the event or the possibility of holding the event. And they said next year is a good possibility that the funding won't even exist. So therefore, they would suggest us holding that and using that money next year, so at least can have one event next year. And they were okay with us putting that money aside and spending it in 2021.
So move.
Support.
Support.
Great. We have motion by Commissioner Nash, second by Commissioner Wilkins. Is there anyone that has any comments on this?
Commissioner Mahoney, I think
Yes,
this is a
Ken.
good idea. Just it's too dangerous at this point, not knowing what COVID is doing. And it's not worth the risk at this point.
Right.
I agree with Commissioner Mahoney. I know that I've worked that event several times and you are really up close and personal. I appreciate you looking into that map for us and the recommendation very much. Anyone else?
I have a question. Does the money set aside equal the total cost of the event?
Matt, do you know the exact number? Yes, go ahead.
Master of Public Works. Okay, for tire event, for just a tire event, it covers the cost of recycling the tires. It does not cover the cost that the solid waste pays for the inmates or any lunches for the inmates. That's for the recycling. That's for the tire events. For the recycling events, again, the DEQ pays to recycle the tires, but the solid waste pays the additional costs, as we can see, 18 to 20,000 to dispose of the hazardous waste, paper shredding, and for materials related to electronics recycling.
And there's also a lot of donated time there. A lot of us donate our time. Anyone else have any more questions?
Yeah,
Who did someone else? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright,
Yes.
Commissioner Laring,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes.
Chairman Hughes,
Yes,
9 yes.
and that motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last item I'd like to talk about is really the budget and the shortfall that Beth discussed in her presentation, which is well done. Thank you, Beth. Before I get started though, first of all, there's no real good options when you're considering a deficit. You have to look at what's out there and what items that we can do and what we can do not do and how it affects each department. Each one is a little bit different. So as I go through these, I'll explain the best I can and field some questions. The long-term Beth had on there is the tax allocation board that was in place back in '74. They established the operating millage in the original at 6.2. This millage is kind of interesting, the fact that it also includes the school system as well as the townships, not necessarily cities, but the townships. So if this is something we're interested in, we would obviously have a work session on this, get a lot of detail, work with the townships on it, and work with the school system on it. And again, this would be a long-term fix. I mean, it's going to take some time to educate the public on something like this, educate townships, educate NASD, even educate ourselves exactly how this can go through the process. And obviously, Mike Homier would help us through that process. So that's a long-term one. So I'm going to set that one aside for now. In the short term, the first one here is the furloughs. And this summer, we've been very successful with this program. We've had best number shows roughly 500,000 or 400,000 roughly that was made through the summer. And that is going to be used in 2021. So the second round, which is the feds announced that a month ago or so, and then the governor just asked to be included in, I think, the last couple of weeks. This one's a little bit different though. The last one gave 600. This one's only given 300. And it also requires that the employee will be receiving at least $100 of unemployment. For our employees to be able to get that, $8 doesn't, 8 hours a day does not get you there. It has to be 12 hours a day. The courts and the prosecutor have evaluated that, and through a long time in discussion with all the judges amongst themselves, they decided the best thing to do is to save dollars where they can. And I put this down as an opportunity of a grants. Many grants have many restrictions on them. So this one here, if you look at it as a grant, it also has a restriction, and that's the restriction of receiving $100 from the state as unemployment. So that means the employee has to take 12. But there is another problem with this. There's some employees who make less than $17 an hour and still put it into, or to take off 12 hours, they still would not qualify. So we looked at the numbers through everybody who participated the first time around. So the idea is to not include those under $17 an hour just because they would lose money on this. Then we also looked at the opposite end. We figured out it's $33 per hour for someone to lose in revenue but make up $300 from the state, right? So we want to limit who qualifies for this grant or $300 from the feds, supplement $300. So the idea, we would limit it to those between $17 and $33 per hour. Those would be participating. Those who are above the $33 could volunteer. Now, the reason I say that is because I was talking to the prosecutor earlier about his program, and he said they volunteered, quite a few of them volunteered. Quite a few volunteered with Patrick as well, and quite a few volunteered with Sandy. And the reason they're volunteering is because of what's happening outside home. For example, as we all know, the school system isn't back at full capacity. Some are going 2 days on, 2 days off. So each parent has to look at something different there, or a employee who might have to take care of a individual. That extra day off is benefiting them as well. So the idea between 17 and 33, those employees that fall in between there, which is the majority of them, would not be harmed on their salary. Their pay would be the same, but yet their benefit would be they have an extra day at home, extra 12 hours to help away from work. So the 12 hours per week, this summer when we did jump back up, last summer when we did this, there was the jail, Health West, JTC, and MATS were excluded from this because the jail, obviously you need someone there watching inmates. Health West, critical in helping patients as well. JTC, the same thing. MATS received those funds from the feds, so they didn't participate. But this time around, I would see the same ones there, plus two other ones. One would be the equalization department. Looking through that with Donna, we figured out there would be a loss in revenue, which would be greater than a gain of 18 employees being off 12 hours a week. So we would want to add an exclusion for equalization because of the less revenue. The other one out there that is the clerk's office. They're working very hard. Obviously, the election year, they have to prepare for that. Last time this summer, they had 11 people there. I know they can't do that this time around just because of all the work that they had to prepare for the elections. So there would be some other exceptions there of who could and who should participate. The courts went through this whole process, and they're doing 12 hours, 8 hours on a Friday, and the rest of the other hour is 1 hour on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That works best for them. But what we're saying here is not necessarily works best for all departments. IT, for example, talked with Mr. Phillips on this, and he indicated that taking off a Friday would not be ideal for them. So we went and limit this plan for those between $17 and $33 per hour to only be on Friday. It works well for the courts, which works well for the prosecutor, but other departments not necessarily. So the savings of this is roughly between 800,000 and 1 million if we use roughly the same numbers who participated this summer. The idea of that, obviously, the money is coming in from the feds. It's going to help us offset that going into 2021. As Beth indicated, the tax revenue projection is a 3%. That is a projection. Capital was reduced. There's no general fund capital projects that was really in there. If the revenue doesn't bounce back in some of the departments, they're going to be lost there. In the 550,000 revenue or expenditures in the jail, if that was reduced. So there's some assumptions that I got to make sure that we talk about it, that 1.2 million is roughly assuming those conditions are met. So right now, the projection, if majority of the people who participated last time would participate this time, you're looking at anywhere from 800 to $1 million savings. That being said, let's go on to number 2. If the unassigned fund balance is currently at 9.6 million and they do not participate, we're looking at if we back off of any employee furloughing through September, October, November, December, our fund balance will, unassigned fund balance will drop from 9.5 minus the 2.2 to 7.4. That gets us close to our financial policy lower limit. That limit is 14% to 19%. So by not participating in the furloughs, which again can make all employees whole between $17 and $33 per hour. With the furlough, you're still going to take 1.2 million out of the fund balance. But so what we're saying is the furloughs equate to roughly $1 million, but some of the other departments may not be able to participate like they did last time, for example, the clerk's office or equalization. Therefore, it might be around 800,000. Because the reason I say that is equalization alone, based on my numbers, had $100,000 savings this summer by participating. The third option, which I don't want to really consider either, but if the fund balance runs out and all these other assumptions that we made in 2021 aren't there, and we decide not to take advantage of the federal unemployment $300, then you're left with furloughs. If you assume each employee with benefits is around 68,000 on average, you would need 18 people to offset the $1 million furlough that we did not take advantage of. So again, none of these are great decisions. The furlough, as my understanding with the governor, they're going to go back to August 1st. So the sooner you participate, the better. But the other important thing that was made clear to me is we don't know how long this funding will last. Right now, there's guess on how long that will last. As the Fed's legislatures return, the idea is to bring in more money into that fund. But right now, it's open for applicants, and we have roughly 162 employees participating as of today. Question.
Thank you, Mark. Does anyone have any questions? Before, to get going, I think I
do,
will.
Susie.
Go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah, when does this decision have to be made? I mean, this is new information. We didn't get this ahead of time. I don't think I didn't. And it's a lot to digest, and I had a hard time reading it. How do we have to make a decision today, or can we delay it a bit?
You know, and I would step up and recommend that we go with the unassigned fund balance for the next month and see what happens. We may get some new funding in, and we may get some additional funds from the state or from the federal government. And when the Senate goes back, we may get some funding there. I think we could leave some of these options open, but go ahead and commit our fund balance to that. If we get some more COVID funding, it's going to offset that anyway.
I'll
So
support that.
I would make that motion.
No,
Could you put that back on the screen?
Green.
Maybe put that.
And I guess the motion would be to go ahead and use our fund balance and keep our employees serving our residents during this
Correct.
COVID. That's what I would make. That's the motion I would make.
And that was
And
my
that's for what period of time?
That would be, the original motion was through the end of the year. I'd like to do this. I could go the end of the year, but leave the option open if some additional funding becomes available for us to be able to look at it again to maybe take advantage of that.
I see. Okay.
Do we have a second?
I already supported you, Susie.
I'm sorry, Gary, go right ahead. Is there any questions or concerns on this?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah.
Okay, the reason this work share money is available is because of all the money that the federal government has thrown at the economy trying to keep things stabilized. And to me, nobody is going to be hurt financially. In fact, some people will actually do better with this. And if you wait a month, I mean, basically, that's going to be about a third of the potential savings. I mean, nobody is going to be hurt by this.
Bob, as I understood it, 30% of the employees we put on that would lose money.
Mark,
No, that's not correct.
that's not true.
Mark,
That's
can
not
you tell us what that would be?
Yeah, those employees who make $17 up to $33 would benefit or break even.
How many employees do we have that make over that?
That you're talking managers at that point who would not be participating in above directors. So
Okay.
they would not lose money.
So, and anybody under 17 would lose money unless they did not participate.
The recommendation is that they don't participate, and which is only a handful.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions?
Susie, it's a
Yes.
win. It's a win for the employees. It's a win for the county. It's a win. That's what this money was for.
And I understand that, Bob. My concern is that as we're moving out of this COVID, Muskegon County is going backwards if we don't open ourselves back up to the public. We only have one service, and that is to serve the public. If we stop doing that, we throw everybody back into depression again.
But every
I want to move forward.
Susie, every department will be open. They just, not everybody.
You're right,
will be
part
there.
of the time, yes, part of the time. Everybody will be closed on Friday.
Mark, is that?
Not necessarily.
that's not
There's some departments who prefer to work out with their employees to take a Monday versus a Friday or Tuesday versus a Thursday. So I'm just saying it worked best for the courts for that Friday, but they're not necessarily closed. They're considered limited access on a Friday. So they still have taken care of warrants or taking care of the requirements that a judge may need to sign. So the other departments, like these, for example, IT, they could take another day, a few people and a few people and a few people. So it's serviced 5 days a week.
Susie, can I just make one other comment? I'll
Yes,
be
go right ahead,
quiet
Bob.
At this point, okay. So our minimum fund balance is 7 million. If we don't do this, we're going to be right there. If there's a glitch next year, we could end up having to be in some kind of a state program to get us stabilized.
You're right. That's true.
Susie, excuse
Yeah.
me, Madam Chair, may I?
Yes. Yes,
Would
go
you-
ahead, Gary.
Would you alter your motion possibly to say, relook at this again next full board to see if anything new has arose?
Sure, I would be happy to do that.
And I will change my support to that motion.
Withdraw mine.
I have a quick comment, and
Go ahead,
that
Jim.
is until the federal government decides, the funding that the governor or the president has tossed in is very questionable as to whether it will be legal. He can't reappropriate money that already has been appropriated elsewhere. What we're getting in Michigan is FEMA money under an emergency declaration that the governor has made. That's going to change. Once the legislature, the Senate gets back together, they will be adding a few bucks to that and making it much more stable funding. We have no idea what the funding is going to be in terms of the emergency declaration stuff. Without legislation, it's not stable. You won't know from day to day whether it's going to continue or not. And it's unfair to employees to put that risk up. We need a couple of weeks to take a breather, look at it, delve into it a little deeper as to where everybody is at with it. And I'm agreeing with Marcia. I need more detail.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's one
So
reason I wanted to
comment.
postpone this for a while until, I would just like to leave it the way it is right now, leave everybody working for a while until we have more information.
So
I have a comment, Madam Chair.
how long can we table this, Mark?
We're doing 2 weeks, Marcia, was the motion.
Oh, so we can relook at it,
The
make
next
no
full
changes,
board.
At the next
and
full
look
board.
at it again in 2 weeks and get this in writing so we can read it
Yeah.
and digest it.
Commissioner Laring, go ahead.
Well, so my comment is we already know we're in trouble in 2021, and we know we've got to start making some cuts for 2021. This is an opportunity for these employees to and some of them are requesting this. So I'm not quite sure. It sounds as if you think you're looking out for the employees, but the way I understood this, there's a number of the employees that want this just so they can help take care of their own family matters, and it helps our budget. We're going to be in trouble in 2021. I say we start early. Don't kick the can down the road.
2
What if-
weeks, that's all we need.
Well, and I would like to see, Mark, this is so small that we can't read it
Yeah.
either. So that's part of the
figured out
reason,
how to-
part of the
yeah.
confusion.
Right.
I guess I'm confused on what option we're looking at.
I was looking at
There's a motion
I was
on the
looking at the number 3.
No, number
The
2.
lay- Are you saying the
Well,
layoffs?
No, I was
But
looking
you
at
have a
number 2. I'm
motion on-
sorry. I'm
Number
looking at
2
number 2.
without
Yep,
layoff
number 2.
or furloughs.
I can't read it. It's too small. on
Mark,
my
So
could I make a
there's a point
suggestion?
of order.
Mark,
We have a motion on the table to table this thing for 2 weeks. That's the motion being discussed. Mark's motions weren't seconded. So we need to continue on. We need to decide if we're going to table this for 2 weeks or if we're going to go back to the original motions.
Actually, I made the motion to go with the unassigned fund balance until we can get back and get some more information and maybe change it.
Yeah, there was no motion to table.
There was no
But
motion
I
to
guess
table.
Yeah.
I wanted to add some comments on
Go ahead,
this
Charles.
because we're talking about using those unassigned funds, and I agree with Commissioner Laring. We're going to be looking at some things in the next year where I think we're going to be seeing a lot of cuts. And I guess I'm a little bit concerned about going into our fund balances and stripping them down to the bare minimum. And I don't know what this cost is really going to amount to because what we're talking about paying for, I don't think we have a grasp a number on it. But I would be concerned about using our fund balances, considering we may need those so much more in the upcoming years. So, and I'm also agreeing with Ken, I don't know exactly how this 300 is it secure? Is it coming down? Is it locked in? We don't know. And then there's still negotiations on things coming down. So I don't think we should move on something this big so quick without having our our details in order.
Would you rather postpone this decision for 2 weeks?
Yes,
Period?
I would.
I will withdraw my
I
motion
would
and
like to
change
see
it
that.
to
I
postponing
would,
for 2
a
weeks.
motion to table for 2 weeks till the next full
No,
board.
you don't want to table.
No,
No, I just made a
No, no.
motion to postpone it.
And I will support
Postpone it.
that.
Okay, fine with that.
Yep, that's just wording is all it is, Marcia.
Yeah,
Just
I know.
wording.
Well,
Susan, could I make a comment on that?
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, I'm not sure what 2 weeks is gonna cost, but I suspect it's gonna be somewhere in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. I mean, I understand you wanna figure it out. And I also would suggest that maybe Mark have meetings, Zoom meetings with maybe 3 commissioners at a time to go over this, so everybody can really understand what is going on.
Yes,
But it's also important that we talk to the department heads and directors so that we know what they're looking at going in. I mean, Nancy Waters has got the biggest election we have every 4 years coming up. And I know IT, for example, has got some stuff that they need to be getting done because we've already purchased all of the stuff. I mean, if we wait 4 months to get it installed, I mean, we're backing up.
But Mark said it wouldn't necessarily, like, for example, with Nancy's department, they can't go short-staffed before this election.
no, no.
But whose
I mean,
decision
nobody
is that?
expects that.
I think we need to know whose decision it is. What departments don't do it, what departments do it, whose decision, how many people do it, I think we need more information.
Don't we have a motion on the table?
Yes, we do.
Don't- Okay,
What is the motion?
The motion is to postpone these decisions until 2 weeks when we have more information in front of us, till the next full
Support.
board. We have a second. Is there any
So,
other discussion?
Yeah, I have one more comment. So are all 3 of these options going to be brought back to us in 2 weeks?
I think all of the options that we have available to us will be brought back.
Yeah, I can bring this back again.
Yep. And if there's any others by that time, we'd like to look at those too.
Sounds good to me.
Me too. Nothing else?
Well,
Madam
and
Clerk?
I think we'll just need a lot of the stuff that Mark was saying. I couldn't like copy it down quick enough. And there's a lot of detail that's not on here that we'll need.
Yep. All right, let's have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
The roll call is on the motion to postpone this for the 2-week period
Yes.
with obtaining additional information. Commissioner
Great.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright,
Yes,
Commissioner Laring,
Yes, yes.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
yes.
and Chairman Hughes.
Yes.
9 yes to postpone.
Thank you very much. That motion carries. I think
And
that
can
was a
this
wise
be-
move.
and can this be forwarded to us?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So that ends my report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I had a question. When is the next full board?
I looked at it's the 8th of September.
The 8th of September.
Oh, man. I'm going to be out of state.
Well, we are going to be on Zoom.
yeah.
Oh,
So you can
I'll be
join
I'll
us.
be at the meeting.
Wonderful.
I'll be-
I will get to
The
look
new
at your
option.
smiling face the whole time. Wonderful.
I
Next
hope
we
I'm not
have,
on the flying time.
I hope you're not too. Old business. Is there any old business to come before this committee? Seeing none, any new business?
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, please,
On
Commissioner
the
Foster.
4th of September, we're requesting your presence at Veterans Memorial Park with Mike Bow and myself on some additions being done to the north side of the water. So at 2 o'clock, if you could put it on your schedule to try to be there.
Okay, would you send me an email? And I have to ask one other question. Do I have to bring a shovel?
No,
Oh, perfect.
This will be with Kathy Evans and that
Okay.
group.
All right. It's sounding better all the time.
September 4th too?
Yep. just
That
for-
is this for the chair.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, just for the chair. Okay.
All right. Any other new business? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Any public comment? I do not see any. Mark, do you see any?
No, I do not.
All right. We will, final board comments.
Madam Chair, I
Yes, sir.
just have one quick comment. You know,
Go ahead, Bob.
I got a LinkedIn notice today that Commissioner Mahoney's wife is now the city clerk in Montague. Is that true?
Yes, but
That
it's
is
not
true.
new.
So
She's
does that
she's
not
been there
new,
for a while.
That's true.
does she count your votes then?
No,
No.
she counts your votes.
She won't count my votes.
She doesn't- No, she doesn't count any votes.
And congratulations to KP on that. She'll be wonderful, but she's been at it for a while now.
Yes.
Any other final board comments? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll move.
And we are
Support.
adjourned. Thank you.